Hello there, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 108 of FinalBossTV. Today, your WoW and Game Range show. I'm your host. My name's Adam K, aka Bay, and I'm sorry for the delay. It was only going to be a 2-week break between the 2015 season end finale of Coltrane Brutal and Novel, and then 2 weeks later we would do another show. But the show that was on that week, I was sick, and then 2 of my guests couldn't make it, so it was like a kerfuffle of terribleness. But we are back today for volume number 1 of possibly very many for the Legion junket, where we're going to talk about Legion. So this is Let's Talk About Legion, episode number 1. Sitting down here with 2 of my guests today. We'll mostly be talking about hunters and priests today, because my guests know about hunters and priests, apparently. Returning to the show, Slurpee in hand, there's Jack. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
How's your Slurpee? Is it all melted?
It's amazing. Actually, it's not. You know, I mean, it's stabilized pretty well.
It's stabilized.
You know, and I managed to not drink all of it already, so I have enough to tide me through the show.
That's an important thing. I think you've had a Slurpee on the show every time you've been here, I want to say.
I like to be consistent. You know?
I like it. And then right before the show, in case you missed it and you weren't watching live, then shame on you. Playing the ukulele, representing hunters, there's Azortharion. Hello, sir.
Hello. Hello. It's a pleasure to be here yet another time. I'm not as consistent with my choice of beverage, but I mean, it's the healthy option. I'm trying to change.
Oh, yeah? Is that...
You have to indulge yourself. You must reward yourself from time to time, my friend.
That's what I do with music.
That's a good point.
It's rare that I get to play for such an amazing audience.
That's very true. My goodness. The sellout, Jack. Jack be selling out. Oh,
I would
man.
sell my soul for Slurpee sponsorship, let me tell you.
So we've got a good 90 to 100 minutes of stuff to talk about today. We will work in some live chat Q&A when we get there. But sort of as I'm going to change around the format of the show a little bit, going into these next junket, I kind of want to talk about just nerdy stuff to begin with for a little bit. So, what do you guys think of Star Wars, huh?
Azortharion, what did you think of Star Wars?
Well, the case is that I haven't watched a Star Wars movie ever.
Any of them?
Any.
None at all. Not even like a little bit.
Not even a little. Well, you see, some scenes on YouTube because it's up
Just
in
some.
popular culture, but I've never seen a Star Wars movie.
Can you believe this guy? That's the secret to Hunter DPS. It's restraining yourself to never watch a Star Wars movie. So if you're a hunter and you've watched a Star Wars movie ever, that's why your DPS is bad.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
you
just lives in
really,
the woods the whole time.
you really got to give up some luxuries like anything but water
Oh, okay.
and Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
It's a dedicated lifestyle.
Oh my goodness. So then, Jack, what do you think of The Force Awakens?
It was pretty good. It had the problem of being the first of I guess it's gonna be a new trilogy, I suppose. Sure. So they're introducing a ton of characters, and the progression of some of the characters, like Rey, was just really weird. And it's just I'm a badass in the desert, and then it's I could use the Force, and I beat the Sith guy, and I won.
Yeah.
And I really didn't get the impression that she was going to be the one who used the Force, because all the previews had Finn with a lightsaber.
Right.
And it was just let it in. And he's with the lightsaber fighting Kylo Ren. And I was like, oh, what the fuck happened with Rey? Why wasn't that in any of the previews at all?
It's the bait and switch, Jack. It's the bait and switch.
I guess.
They got you. The marketing team got you. You've been gotten.
Spoilers. It's
Spoiler.
been out for a month, 3 months.
There's no spoilers anymore.
Well,
I went
I can't
over
watch
this.
it. I can't watch it now.
Well, we spoiled it for you. But
It's over.
Yeah.
It's over. It's over.
I
Kylo
remember-
Ren is actually Luke's father. Azor. It's all over now.
This has no
Dang.
significance to me.
Yeah.
You know who these people are.
Who's that?
But I'm sure it will.
Yeah.
Who's that? Yeah. No.
Mhm.
If you haven't seen the movie right now and you don't know anything about it, it's your own. Sorry. I did a total spoiler talk stream a little while ago where we talked about it for 3 hours. So broke down a whole bunch of stuff based on Imager and Reddit and Tumblr posts and stuff. It's crazy. It's your own fault I haven't seen it in a month. How about anything else crazy happening? If you haven't seen Star Wars, then Azor, how is your IRL MMO going so far? I see you picked up a ukulele. Is that your new hobby of sorts?
Well, I've always played guitar, but I think that nothing quite. I think it's a very great instrument
It's a
because
noble aspiration. Ugh.
yeah, nothing else can produce that sound. And
Fine.
if you've already played something else, it's very nice. So I think it was a supreme Christmas gift.
Ooh. I think we need to get you and Brutal to do a ukulele duet now.
Yeah, does he have one?
Yes.
Oh well,
Yes, he does.
well, this seems to be inevitable then.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Anything with you, Jack? Just Slurpees?
And work. Zug zug.
Mm-hmm. You're really exciting. Thanks. That's good.
I know. I mean, well, that's the IRL MMO. I mean, we could talk about the Breath Knight Wars and the magic of the Violet, also Shadows and stuff I do on the weekends with that, which is fantastic. But
What is that? What are you talking about? Go
Breath
into more
Knight.
detail. Yep.
Okay, so now that like you need 0 healers for HFC, you know, I got to be doing something different from time to time.
Mhm.
We're not playing the Holiest Priest, so I picked up Death Knight on the weekends, and oh my God, Breath of Cinder Ghost is so good. It's really fun, you know. Just saying.
Too bad I'm stealing 2 of your Breath of Cinder Ghosts as an enhancement shaman in Legion.
And you're taking Wellspring. It's like
Yeah, shaman are taking everything from Death Knights in Legion.
I was like looking, I was like, what is this Wellspring thing? Did I miss something in Priest News? And then
I
it's
know.
a shaman ability.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness me. All right, then. The real question everyone wants to know before we break down some hunter and priest knowledge. Azor,
Mm-hmm.
are you a pie or cake guy?
Pie or cake guy? I'm a cake guy because I think that I like the texture of cake more
Okay.
than cake. Oh no, more than pie. So that wasn't actually very hard. That was.
Jack, what about you?
Well, seeing as how my weekend guild with my Breath Knight is called Cake Plantation, I think I'm morally and contractually obligated to say cake.
Awesome.
Awesome. Oh man, there are lots of different types of pie. I think you gotta be in more of a root for pie, but I'm gonna say that I'm also.
I think in general, like pie has like too many polarizing flavors. You know, the things that you love, things that you just abhor. But with cake, it's like, as long as they don't like dump frosting on it, like the store-bought stuff. If you're eating store-bought cake, you got problems. Like, that's plastic.
That is
guys.
plastic.
So make your own cakes.
Banana nut and cherry cake. Mwah. Good, great cake right there. All right, then. So let's dive into the thick of the gooey center of Legion, at least for the 2 of you.
Of the cake.
So we're going to kind of go ping-ponging back and forth here to kind of go over some general stuff. And then when we go a little deeper, then we'll go just all hunter for like an hour, and then all priest for about an hour. So each of you have to sit around and just wait when the person talks. But, Mr. Azortharion, sir, the new survival hunter, it's sort of changed a little bit, just maybe.
Yeah.
What do you think so far?
I think I slightly prefer the old model. Okay, the previous model was that every time you use Mongoose Bite, you stack a damage buff on that ability. And you also refresh a 3.5 second buff, which increases the damage done. But the thing is that if you wanted to keep this up, and you very much could keep it up at the maximum of 6 stacks, you had to Mongoose Bite, and then you cast something else, and then Mongoose Bite. And that was how you always were supposed to play. And if you ever screwed that up or had to switch targets, or you were like inattentive or unable to cast Mongoose Bite for just half a second, you lose all your stacks. So it was very unforgiving in that aspect. So what they changed is they increased the buff duration to 12 seconds, but they made it so that it doesn't refresh the duration anymore. So you just try to build, like when you start your roll of Mongoose Bite, so to speak, you try to get as many within this 12-second window as possible. And what I think is that it's probably needlessly complex in a way. It's not that hard, but I don't think it feels very good. This whole I managed to reach however many stacks and hold on to them for, well, however long I had left when I reached the 6th stack of the 12-second buff. So in short, I'm not a fan. I prefer the old one where you were sort of like struggling to hold on to those stacks, because now it doesn't feel like it has any significance.
Yeah, it feels... So I test every single specialization, and I'll be doing 3 passes in total throughout all of my testing. So I did survival, and so I saw it before and now after the change. I kind of feel like this change with a 12-second window obviously is a lot more lenient on target swapping and obviously lag. Because even if you lagged in the 3.5-second window of the old version, then it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's punishing. That's not very fun. So I mean, that's as the core component. It's also kind of awkward that there is now in the 12-second window of Mongoose Bite a physical, you cannot cast more than this many, and that's like 8 if you have like godly RNG and you use Snake Hunter.
Yeah.
I think maybe 9 as like higher gear levels if you have more haste, like if you get more lucky procs, but it... Do you think it'll be worthwhile in raids? Like, do you think it'll be worth it? Do you think it'll be just like a fun little spec to play on the side, or not for mythic raiding, or for PvP, or what's it gonna land for you?
I think the general consensus, I think most people are not, no one really loves it. I think that's a reasonably safe thing to say. And in order to not only move people to this new spec, which is scary and in all of its, many ways, but also move people that were most likely ranged DPS before to melee, really take something special. And that's probably, like, for most rated, it's going to be attractive DPS. They did say something about melee DPS were meant to be slightly higher to make up for their shortcomings mechanically. But I think, there's nothing intrinsically built into the spec that makes it very powerful for like target switching or mobility. Even they removed disengage from survival in the last alpha build.
Right.
So there's nothing really super attractive about survival in a raid setting right now. It'd have to do a lot of damage, and often that's not really enough unless it's just, ridiculously OP, and that never lasts for too long.
I mean, it has, as with all hunter specs in the game, I'm not trying to like throw shade on hunters, but if you've seen any of my testing right now with Enhancement Shaman, you realize how easy a hunter is. And you have like 1 dot, you have 1 filler ability, you have your 1 small cooldown, like with your pet, and then you have Mongoose Bite. That's like all you have, right?
Yeah.
That's it. So, I mean, the propagation for good damage is probably pretty easy to balance because they only have 4 buttons. But I do wonder if they make it too strong, then every hunter has to like be almost mythic hunters anyway, have to be forced to play it. But then you don't need more melee in raids as it is. So
that'd be a really terrible situation for a class as popular as hunter.
Right.
To like for the best spec to be like, at least by a long shot, you can say, if it was sort of equal with whatever the top ranged spec between marksmanship and beast mastery, then maybe it'd be okay, because then you can bring one of like either. But the fact remains that by almost all objective measures, survival is not a very engaging spec, because besides being like pretty simplistic when it comes to how many buttons you have to press, it also has a 1.5 second global cooldown. So besides all of that, it's very slow. So it's pretty miserable to play, actually. Let's say.
Well, you think that's slow. I'm curious to know what you think about Marksman Hunter in a little bit. But I'm going to throw it over to Jack. It's your turn to be honest, Jack.
Oh.
We know in the community anyway. So we on the show, we know, and it's why it's like kind of like we're bringing on the show for this. But the new Discipline Priest also been changed a lot. So what do you think of the new Discipline Priests?
It's actually really fun. It's a lot of fun with the core of the abilities. They're very... How you apply atonement. So, those you don't know, the focus of it is that you're putting out like mini beacons, like a Holy Pally beacon, of who is going to be getting your damage turned into healing from atonement. So you're applying atonement to the different targets, and then you're dealing damage, then you're healing them with that. And it's actually a lot of fun with how you're doing that. I was not really sure, and it looked very clunky to start, but from switching between damage and healing, it's really good. It's really, really good.
So the big question though
Oh boy.
is that, I mean, is this the like the proper switch because of like the shield absorb meta we've been dealing with now for 3 expansions? Is this going to, because obviously powered shield has a 6-second cooldown now.
Yep.
There is an ability you can use, the new version of Rapture, to remove the cooldown for like 15 seconds or 12 seconds. So you can kind of blanket shield a little bit. But I mean, is this going to help the, because right now if you play Discipline Priest, you just shield, cow, maybe once or twice, shield, player of mending. That's all you do. So
Yeah.
is this going to be a step in the right direction though?
I definitely think so. They did a really big number on absorbs as a whole. And honestly, I'd probably say that Powered Shield was like less of a big deal that they nerfed in terms of all the absorbs that they nerfed.
Mhm.
I'd actually say Divine Aegis was like the biggest one, like by a long shot.
That's the
If
Holy
you-
Paladin Mastery, yeah?
No, it's
that's-
crit.
Oh, the crits. Oh, yeah.
When you crit heal, instead of having double the healing, that is
Okay.
just in turn a bubble. If you remember in Siege of Orgrimmar, it got like way out of control at the end, where all of your healing was Divine Aegis. So them removing that was actually the biggest deal, and it also doesn't, and it also makes it so that Disciplined Priests don't have overheal protection.
Oh, okay.
Right? There's not a point to having a billion atonements out until you get the last artifact thing, which we're going to talk about later. To be doing all this healing, because you're not making any absorbs, you're not doing any healing with it. So maybe you'll just spam DPS and just do DPS.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think any Discipline Priest will probably always keep a tone up 100% of the time on both tanks.
Yeah,
I imagine you keep him up on both tanks because you just basically powered shield a tank on cooldown. And if you do it every 6 seconds, atonement will last long enough that both tanks will always have atonement on them.
Yep.
So, do you think it'll work in Mythic rating, or it'll be like, because
I think it'd be pretty insane in Mythic rating, actually.
the argument that we made last expansion about this whole thing when they were trying to take discipline was that why bring a healer that does 50% damage and 50% healing when you just bring one or the other, right?
When you have healing downtime,
Sure.
you have like this expansion, for instance, right? Monks are pretty desirable in HFC because they did some kind of damage in downtime, and you had a lot of the later fights, a lot of the harder fights, like Manaroth, like Zolarak. They had a lot of downtime, like a lot of just doing nothing.
Right.
Where in the beginning of the fights, you could just 2 or 3 heal it or something like that, and then the end of the fight, that's when you needed that extra healer, and that's where they could come in and actually do something. So being able to contribute meaningful damage there was, pretty big deal. But all the other healers, you're going to be doing like maybe 20k or something like that before those upgrades came in, And it's just like, oh boy, and you're doing 0 healing while you're doing that. But when you're able to do both, it's pretty good. But I also don't think that they're intending you to be half healer, half DPS. The other side of it, I think it's going to be more of like maybe 70% of a tank's damage and like 70-ish% of like a healer,
Okay.
I think it's going to be more than like half this, half that, or 60-40,
I think it's going to really depend on encounter design because
have to be careful if they have anything like Horadon, where there was damage taken increases on boss. I mean, there's multiple bosses that have had that in the past. But
right, because exactly that's what I'm saying. Like if they're like Spinal Deathwing like tendons, right, or like exposed bosses, or I mean, but we can't say that though because Scorpiron or Mr. Ron as he is, he has a double damage phase. So, but there's no damage being done really. So that's a different double damage phases. They don't have
kind of.
Right. It does make me. I had a lot of fun playing it. It was pretty cool. It feels like a DPS where you have like multiple little maintenance buffs where you can look at your little beacons as like your hunger for bloods, which I always use as an example because it's just like, yeah, hunger for blood. But we'll have to see how that feels.
Even with Grace, one of the newest talents for level 100, where it will buff all of your absorbs. Even with that talent taken, I think absorbs are like on logs. They've been like 30-40% of a Dispriest healing. So it's not ultra substantial. Maybe it'll get a little bit higher once more of the artifacts unlocked and like raptures, durations increased and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that'll be a thing, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm not that worried about absorbs being dominating. I'm more thinking about discs damage being so high and their healing being very high as well, and that's just so good to bring along.
Right.
Especially because they are pushing this thing of we want to have these healers being able to contribute damage. So,
Yeah.
like challenge modes, for instance, Mr. Pandaria, you would bring Disc Priest. You know, they deal a absolute ton of damage.
Yep.
Challenge modes now, if you're actually bringing a healer.
Right. Yeah.
'cause
Right
a lot of
now
people
it's
aren't.
yeah. You can bring a fist weaving monk sometimes, but usually
I see a lot of people bringing Resta Druids.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they'll use heart and then they'll actually heal when they have to heal.
Right.
You know.
We'll have to see. That's a good point though, because technically it's sort of healing tanks while healing other things has kind of been like the beacon of light meta for a long period of time. Like you always bring a holy paladin because double bacon is too good. But with that changing, now it'll be like, well, our holy paladin's not going to be super beneficial because you can just have an atonement priest, always have atonement on both your tanks and always doing damage that's actually not bad, and always healing your tanks all the time. So
that's one thing you got to be careful of, especially
Exactly.
when they're pushing this whole many hits to kill a tank.
Yep.
Because it's like double beacon was not the reason you brought holy paladins in HFC. It was the reason you brought them in the first two raids. But like in HFC, it's because they're doing like they're topping off touches of harm and befouled in like a cast. You're just like, all right, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And their beacons are like overhealing for like 70%, you know.
We'll have to see.
So
All right.
if it's many hits, I'd be worried about beacon.
Yeah, well, tanks have tons of HP so far in testing, but obviously the numbers tuning, they are still dying in like 3 or 4 hits. Like, they'll just get crushed still. It's kind of weird looking. Unless you play a Guardian Druid right now and you don't take any damage. Because that's fun, but... Alrighty then, back over to you, Azor. To be honest, how much do you love Marksman Hunter? How's the new Marksman Hunter feeling?
I love it a lot, actually. Because, like you said before, I didn't like the slow play of survival. And you said something about, well, excited to hear what I think about marksmanship. Do you think it's slow, or
no? I
was
wonder
it the opposite?
Because Marksman Hunter, with the new incarnation of like Arcane Shot, is just a cooldown. And you just like Arcane Shot filler. Like it feels like you have a GCD every button basically, unless you're casting an aimed shot, right? It's only cast time ability you even have. So that was my curiosity. Is like if you didn't feel like that's slow, then what do you feel about Marksman then? Like, does it feel... My biggest thing was that, do you feel like there's too many, like, percentage plus damage bonus modifiers? Because that's what was the problem with Windwalker Monk for a long time. I'm getting 10% from this, and 40% from this, and 15% from that, and 35% for that, and 10% from this talent. Like, is that... That's what Marksman is right now. Is that okay?
Well, yeah, that's true. And especially with crit damage bonuses from the artifact. But I don't think it's... it can be problematic if you get a lot of it when it comes to like something becoming overtuned, like current day Arcane Mages. That's also a result of the ring, plus other such damage bonuses. But as with how marksmanship plays, I like it a lot that it's very quick and that you have an instant cast filler, which WoW hasn't seen much of, because it also generates your main resource.
Yep.
And what I've always kind of wanted from Hunter specs that hasn't been there so much until now is the ability to sort of excel from a damage done standpoint, I guess. And the way marksmanship works right now, the way you play it, is you get your 3 stacks with mark shot. You get 3 of those vulnerable stacks, where each stack causes aim shot to do 25% more damage. And then you keep, if you use that talent, which right now is the most attractive one, true aim.
Yep.
You stick to one target and you use, if you just do your rotation normally, you'll stack it up eventually. And if you just keep doing it, it'll stay there. But since mark shot is pretty low damage, and with 3 stacks, aim shot is such high damage, what you really end up doing is being very clutch about how you do things, because the optimal way to play is to refresh mark shots, 10-second buff on your aim shot as late as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So what you end up doing is you get your 3 stacks, and then you dump as many aim shots as possible. And then when there's
Right.
like half a second to a second left of your mark shot buff, you refresh it. And the longer you're willing to go down, like the less aim shots you're willing to do and still keep the buff up, the more you're going to do. And it's really going to show, because aim shot is that powerful.
Right.
And with 3 stacks, focus actually has a lot of value. So in that way, I like it. And I also like that it's quick. And because you have to take care of both your true aim stacks, because there's one issue with true aim is that if you're like just doing your thing and there comes an AoE kind of thing you want to do, you can't barrage without losing your true aim buff. There's just not enough time. It'll just expire before the cast even finishes.
Right.
So that issue aside, I like that that you always have to think a lot ahead, and it also goes very quick, so you don't actually have a lot of time to think. But like, I think I'm largely alone in liking this very much, because the general consensus seems to be that it's very clunky having to keep up these 2 buffs, especially with the alphas, like horrendous, standard UI. Of course, that doesn't help. But personally, I like the quick. Like, it's very different. It's much more difficult and it's much quicker, and that's what I've wanted from Hunter Spec for very, very long.
But the thing that when I was looking at it is, it feels like it's the same thing that Survival had. I mean, mostly because True Aim, again, in that category, in your 15 talents, like the only one that goes like, ooh, that looks like it was going to do, because it's more multiplicative additions onto aim shot, right? It's propagating more damage into your highest damage dealing button, right? And you want to make that do as much damage as you can, which is just like the whole stacking mongoose bite thing with Survival. And I just don't know if that's the way it should go, because I always feel like these problems with specs that have, when they're getting too many multiplicative additions and percentage based damage across the board, like that's the way to play, right? And that's why it brings me to kill flip, is because if they're trying to go for this class fantasy, people have been arguing about this on YouTube, on my Marksman Hunter preview, like, is it a Legolas fantasy where you're like always moving and firing off bullets and be like, woo, I'm Legolas with a bow and arrow, yeah? Or is it a sniper where you're standing back and you're shooting from range and you're far away and you're just like blasting because your mastery still gives you range?
Yeah.
But so what's the goal do you think they're trying to make happen with the new Marksman Hunter?
Well, I think they're trying all of it and not really overly
Okay.
but not really overly succeeding with either one. I think that, like, when I play it, it feels more like how I imagine Legolas to be, right?
Okay.
So just, jumping around, and you don't really mind the range. The range component of your mastery is really inconsequential, but obviously they added it for, a thematical reason or whatever.
Do you get a shield to slide around on?
That's what Killflip should be replaced by.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If only.
Because
I would love that.
Because there's like a dot spec with Marksman with like Black Arrow and Piercing Shots and Murder of Crows. And I guess Dark Ranger is also still a dot technically. And it's like, okay, yeah, but then the other one is like lock and load oriented, true aim. It's very much like, I'm going to sit back here. You could headshot it. I don't know. We'll get into that when we talk about talents a little more. But there's like a one that's very much sit still and turret. But then the issue is, obviously, when it comes down to balancing, if certain talent layouts are the best that mythic hunters figure out, it'll trickle down into the webway, and everyone will be like, everyone has to use kill flip. And you know, like, move forward and then kill flip backwards, and move forward and kill flip backwards, and move forward and kill flip backwards, and you keep, like, moving through the range combo, and you're using a movement ability for DPS. That's just always, like... They're not a demon hunter, okay? Demon hunters are getting forced to use movement abilities for DPS, but not... Why should a ranged class also? Is that what they're...
Yeah. I think that the theme they're trying to accomplish is the sniper, picking out targets from range. But I think that when you actually play, the abilities themselves lend themselves more to a fast-paced, in-your-face kind of hunter because it's very fast.
Right.
You can't say that, like, if you want to really dig up the Legolas example, I guess you can't switch targets like he can.
You can't, exactly, right.
With true aim. So,
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure if they're going for either. And if they are, they're probably going for both.
You can't really do it with marked shot. Your main basic ability is still a single target debuff. You can, I mean, you can multi-shot and get Hunter's marks up, and then you can kill shot and hit multiple. I mean, mark shot and hit multiple ones, but that's still, you gotta restack your marked shot when you move or change targets. So if you take this very, I mean, is that the goal? Because it all comes out of number balancing. Right now we're in a design phase. I understand, but it feels like they really can't do both Robin Hood and Legolas.
That's probably true.
Because only one will be worth a damn.
Yeah. I think rating. Like the shortcomings that are intrinsical to marksmanship, like target switching, those are mostly fixed, like partially fixed by talents. There's one that allows you to immediately stack up 3 vulnerability stacks.
Sure. Heightened vulnerability.
So you can so you can immediately start aim shotting and switch targets that way, and that's a pretty short cooldown. But like with how things are tuned right now, it's obviously not very good because, well, it's pretty good, but another one is like completely OP, of course, in headshot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think that's very, there's no way it'll be that powerful. Like when we start playing the actual spec in live service.
I mean, it felt, I don't want to be disingenuous here. It felt easy, but it felt very impactful.
For a hunter?
No! I mean, it felt cool kind of managing true aim and like making sure that you like weave in an arcane shot to make sure you mark the target, to make sure you have a marked shot to fire off right at the end of an aim shot to refresh your marked debuff at the very end of its duration, right, to get the most benefit out of aim shot. Like, it had some things, but then I looked at it and I was like, but like, kill flip though. And it ruined like my entire brain process of how it's supposed to be. Because, like, then the kill flipped headshot nonsense all comes into it, and I'm just like, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what's going on.
It'll also, I don't know. I don't think for one that kill flip is going to be as good on live service. Like 50% damage, a bit under half the time is very, very powerful, of course.
Yeah.
But I think that the interesting thing about the whole tier that it's in is that you got Dark Ranger, which at least if they fix it so that it doesn't taunt in dungeons or raids, it's the lazy choice.
Yep.
It gives you a little bit of damage bonus, but you really don't interact with the things you do. Then there's Lock and Load, which is like a proc that you react to, so it's a little more involved. And then there's Kill Flip, which is game changing for how you play. So you got the lazy option, the medium option, and then you got, the balls deep option, if you will. So I like that you get the choice, and I hope that with balancing, I still think the most involved choice should be the theoretical best, and the one that one should probably strive to master at a high level.
Sure.
But I think the choice is there if they tune it right, and I think that's pretty good. And I think Kill Flip can have a spot as the try-hard option in that sense.
We're talking a lot about DPS right now, Jack. So now the real question comes back to you.
Yeah?
How is Holy Priest DPS going to be in Legion?
Ooh. It's looking pretty saucy, let me tell you. Especially if, I mean, it's probably not going to happen, but recently with Disc, they just changed Mind Blast, and they basically turned it into Smite and then removed Mind Blast. So the absorb component of Smite now is whenever you deal damage to the target, you have an absorb on that target that'll absorb the damage that they're about to deal, which is kind of funny. It's kind of sensationalist to say, but in an expansion where they're dumbing down absorbs or bringing down absorbs, they make the most powerful, most efficient type of absorb. And the type is the important part because it's not that big of a value as it shouldn't be, but it also will never overheal. It's kind of interesting to think about.
Right. Well, you said the smite interaction. Now, your Holy Priest is not out yet available. It's not currently available. But so all we are looking at right now is stuff that's been data mined and the talent calculators that are up right now. But I can't not talk about this and not talk about Holy at the same time. But
Exactly.
Discipline has the offensive absorb thing with Mind Blast.
Now Smite.
Now Smite, right.
Mind Blast is removed.
Which is the trade-off. Yeah, there's no Mind Blast anymore. That was in my first pass, and I was like, Mind Blast still here? This feels kind of awkward.
Yeah, it was weird when you're able to spam something as Discipline.
Yeah.
You're able to spam a Shadow spell as Discipline.
Sure.
And Shadow has a cooldown on that spell. What do?
What do? So then, looking at Holy, though, obviously we've had a love-hate relationship with chakras.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So, what are happening to chakras in Holy and Legion?
Ding dong, the witch is dead.
No.
They have removed chakras completely. And it's kind of a nice choice. The interesting thing about it is chakras had like a really big impact and they had really big implications for when you're in it because what is it, Mr. Pandaria before the change, obviously. You know, you can't cast single target spells when you're in AoE chakra because you just do nothing, you know, and vice versa. So then going into WoD, they made them pretty much useless. You would still camp in the same chakra over and over again because the cooldown reduction of Circle of Healing was just so good. There's like very marginal situations you'd go into Serenity and very few times you would. But then they realize, well, this doesn't really have that much of an impact and you're not dancing around. And if you're looking at it as a brand new player, you're like, wow, this has a really short cooldown. So maybe I should be switching between them and using both the holy words as frequently as possible. And that's really not the case.
Okay.
So a lot of the nice things about Holy Priests going into Legion is that they took what was useless and they are making it good. They're iterating on it.
Okay.
And they took whatever already works and they're not really changing all of it. So
it's still going to be about mending. It's going to be about renews. It's going to be about Holy Nova, doesn't it?
Actually, Holy Nova's not going to be doing any healing. It's going to be our way of doing AoE damage.
Oh.
Which would be kind of nice because they want to have everybody be able to do damage. It'll be good for leveling as well.
Right.
That's one kind of problem I have with Disc at the moment when you're trying to level as Disc is you don't really have any kind of AoE. So maybe having Mindseer or Holy Nova, but very much toned down so it's not a thing, it's not overpowered for them in a raid environment.
Okay.
But something that they can level with, I'd really like to have. Like they could tone it down as much as they want, just as long as I'm able to, you know, kill the tiny little spider mobs as I'm running through High Mountain or something. You know?
So overall, from what you've seen from Holy so far, though, do you think it's not anywhere near as drastic as the changes to Discipline? So, like, anything else to really mention besides the chakra change, though? I guess
Holy
just
Words.
Holy Words, yeah.
So previously, Holy Words were like really marginal impact. They were kind of good, but they had very, very little impact. It was kind of like if you look at 90 talents in Mr. Pandaria when they first came out and how they were a huge part of your healing, and then you go into Warlords and they're like just barely worth casting. So now they're toning the Holy Words massively up, and they're extremely good, or they're intended to be extremely good. And I'm really, really looking forward to using them. So you have one, which is Serenity, which is a single target, which is intended. We'll see what happens when we get actually to play it.
Yeah.
It's intended to heal you or the target for 50% of their health. If it crits, 100% of their health. And then Sanctify, you aim it like you would with Sanctuary, where it's like a reticule. It's kind of like a Death and Decay aim or a Healing Rain aim, but it's a burst heal. So it's very nice. I'm really looking forward to using them. And it's already putting in elements that Holy's already used to with cooldown reduction. So Sanctuary Chakra in Warlords reduces the cooldown of Circle of Healing.
Okay.
Now Circle of Healing's a talent, but that cooldown reduction comes in the form of Serendipity, where the spells that you're casting, say you're casting single target spells like Flash or Heal, those are reducing the cooldown of Serenity. If you're casting Prayer of Healing, or if you talent for it, Prayer of Mending, it's reducing the cooldown of Holy Word Sanctify. So it's already rewarding you for the spells you're already using anyway, which is really nice.
That's actually one of the big things that I'll plug Preach on, saying when he was going over healing stuff before Legion really got out, we could actually poke it a lot, was that healers need to feel that there are, which the mana discussion, I don't know if we can really get into yet, because again, there's no number tuning right now. You can't even go on certain healers. But you should, just as a DPS, can micromanage their short-term buffs, stack things up properly, have their positioning right, and time their certain abilities, right? And like in Hunter's case, keep up all your 17 different debuffs. There should be rewards for playing and healing well, but then also drawbacks for not utilizing that properly. So it's good that there's some of that, because right now for Discipline, you have to keep up your atonements. You have to, or you don't do any healing. Like, you could, there's a little bit of self-healing you can do, and you can actually sort of talent to make Penance still be a single target thing, but it's so much more inefficient than just because you can have up multiple atonements, then you Penance the boss, and then you heal most people. So it's good to see both Discipline and Holy getting interactions where the better you play as a healer, the better you will perform as a healer.
Definitely. Like, you have with Discipline, you have the ability Shadow Mend,
right?
Where it operates sort of similar to a flash shield, but there's a damage component to it. So they will take a dot of, it's like 60k or something like that, whatever it is, at level 100. And you'll continually take this dot until you've taken that much damage from all sources.
Right.
So if you're a tank and you're constantly taking damage, well, the negative part of Shadow Mend isn't going to do anything to you. So it's an extremely potent spell, but at the same time, you really don't want to cast it a lot. Like, when you're in a fight, you want to max out your damage. You want to max out your damage. You want to do as much damage as possible, but you also want to keep people alive.
Yep.
So if I'm in a 5-man, if everybody's at 50% health and we kill the boss, and I did an extra 1,000,000 damage, well, that's worth it, as opposed to me doing half that and just keeping everybody at 100%.
Right.
You keep people alive.
There's obviously a huge inherent different skill ceiling in
absolutely.
Discipline now, Discipline and Legion. It's gonna take a while to get that learned together. Holy won't be as jarring of a change, but Discipline's gonna be like the smart heal system you have right now, and you just do damage and atonement does its thing. Like, that's all on the player in Legion. Like, you have to be that smart system. So
the atonement's only as smart as the players. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's the nice thing about it.
Very interesting. So I want to go a little bit deeper now. This is going to be the time where I go into all the Hunter stuff. So we got a little bit into that already, but Monsieur Azortharion. To go back to Survival Hunter now.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what your thoughts are, if anything you think needs to be removed or tweaked, and if there are also any dead talents for the Survival Hunter currently, just to get your feedback. I know Survival had some pretty weird talent choices that they moved, where throwing axes and improved traps were and stuff like that. They've moved stuff around. They moved Dragon's Fire Trap as well. But what do you think so far of the Survival Hunter talent build? And then do you think there's anything that needs to be removed, tweaked, changed, that still is looking a little bit wishy-washy for you so far? What do you think?
I think, okay, first of all, and this is the main idea of the spec, is they probably need to rethink the whole mongoose bite idea. I'm not saying the old thing, because it was so unforgiving, that was probably not the best thing to do. But this new one, it's just only slightly good on a single target, but it's just going to be frustrating in a raid setting where there's more to think about than your rotation. So I don't know what the solution is. Personally, I think many would actually like to see the global cooldown reduced to 1 second. It's what most hunters are used to for the longest time. It's always 1 second, not affected by haste. And I just don't see the reason to make the spec so slow if it's not going to be any more mechanically difficult. So work around a 1 second GCD would be my biggest wish. I think a lot of other maybe questionable decisions would be more tolerable if the spec were a bit faster. As for talents, I think that in the level 15 tier, both Animal Instincts, which has a chance to give you some damage or a bit of movement speed after you use Flanking Strike, which is just, you just use it in cooldown. It's pretty boring. Well, with its current tuning, it's not that great. But it could be. But it's also gonna be RNG what stat you get, or if you even are gonna get a damage increasing stat. If you're just stuck in melee on a single target boss, you probably won't appreciate the movement speed bonus very much.
Right.
And throwing axes is just okay. I mean, I guess it serves the thematical purpose, but I mean,
there's a couple talents like that.
yeah, but it doesn't really do. It's not interesting. It's just glorified glaive toss. It costs almost nothing. It deals however much damage they decide it'll do in the end, and that's it. I guess it looks cool, but I just don't see, because it only deals damage. There's no fancy thing about it, right? So it's just a damage tuning tool. If it's good, it's good. If it's not, and it probably isn't, then it's not.
Yeah.
Way of the Magnathal is it's probably the most interesting thing, but it's also just another buff you have to keep up, right?
Yep.
As if we didn't have enough of that with marksmanship. It every time you use Raptor Strike, which is not that often, but it's every 8 seconds, which you need to use Raptor Strike every 8 seconds to stack this buff up, which is 5 stacks of 5% attack power, so pretty damn powerful. And if you can pull it off, then it's good, and it's just good damage, but it's not very interesting. It just forces you to track another buff and use Raptor Strike to keep it up. So, I mean, it's good, but boring. The movement here, level 30. I mean, dash, the one that increases the duration of aspect of the cheater, which is like a sprint by 3 seconds, is a joke. I mean, that must be changed, because they increased.
So good. It's so good.
So good, especially when that cooldown is 3 minutes. Yeah. So, but I think they said that survival marksmanship are the specs that are going to receive the biggest changes in the next build or couple of builds.
Sure.
And I can't imagine that talent staying. Fast Rider, when we crit, there is a chance the cooldown of disengage will be reduced by 10%, which doesn't apply to survival because there is no disengage for survival.
Yeah, it's dead
so,
now. It's dead talent.
Yeah, dead.
Mm-hmm.
And post haste is also dead because it. Well, no, that's wrong actually. In the new build, they made it so that when you use harpoon instead of disengage, you get a 60% movement speed increase for 8 seconds, which is nice to support a sort of theme of jumping around between targets and leaping between them and dealing damage to them.
Yeah.
But the spec rotationally doesn't lend itself well to that playstyle of target switching and jumping everywhere. I think for target switching in general to be successful, you needs to be either a very fast spec or it needs to have very, heavy hitters, like Arms Warrior Execute or something like that. But survival has to build its powerful one-hitter Mongoose Bite. So yeah, I mean, there's a misalignment between what the spec rotationally is about and what the talents try to make it into. So that entire tier really. Two talents are, well, one of them is completely useless, another is dead, and another is just, I see where you're going, but it doesn't really work because the spec is this and this. The next one is it's like a CC tier. Improved traps just reduces the cooldown of your traps by 15 seconds. And I forget if the survival hunter trap cooldown is 45 seconds or 1 minute.
I think it's 1 minute, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's also 1 minute. So you cut a bit into that cooldown. But in Raid, you don't use traps that much, really. If you need semi-frequent CC, okay, I guess it's all right. But for if you want the most used CC in the Raid or dungeon setting is probably freezing trap for some things.
But Azortharion, steel trap is a single target DPS increase because it does a ton of damage.
Yeah, but it's also 1 minute cooldown. So yeah, so it needs to deal more damage, but it is directly scaling off attack power. So if you're just on a single target, it's a nice DPS option. and you give up some CC for that DPS option.
Sure.
I don't think like genuine DPS through traps is very fun, because like it's, unless you're trying to do AoE with explosive trap, and even that seemed like it's not cool like Defile or Death and Decay in any fashion. Explosive trap and steel trap definitely isn't, because it affects a single target. If you want, something you place with, the reticle or whatever, I think it should be limited to AoE effects and not something you place under the feet of a single target. But if it's tuned well, hunters will use it. That's how it works.
Of course.
Yeah. Caltrops replaces Tar Trap, which essentially replaces the Ice Trap.
Yes.
Which is also like a bit of damage, and it's just an AoE slow. So it just builds a bit of damage into the Ice Trap, essentially. And makes it look cooler, I guess, if you like the idea of these caltrops. So again, a thematical choice in both Steel Trap, which I guess fits the survival fantasy in a way, kind of, maybe not really.
So many if-so factors there, yeah.
Well, yeah, the problem is you're trying to be... Well, I don't even know what you are. You use a spear and you throw harpoons, but you also trap things, I don't know. Moving on to the level 60 tier, you got Sticky Bomb, which deals damage, and it's a knockdown. So if it deals good damage, we'll use it. Fun. Not really. And then there's a Ranger's Net, which replaces Wing Clip, which is a 3-second route. So, a bit of a pretty solid AoE CC, actually, because it doesn't really have an effective cooldown. It's not AoE though, it's actually just single target, so my bad. But yeah, it just improves wing clip, basically. You could just call it improved wing clip. So maybe it'll be useful. I mean, we don't know enough fights to tell. And if you really want CC, you probably want the ranged spec and marksmanship anyway. Camouflage is a 1-second stealth on a 2-minute cooldown. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean,
sounds horrible.
Yeah,
1 minute stealth. 1 minute stealth.
Oh,
Yeah,
1 minute.
yeah.
Oh,
You're
I-
in it
I
for a
heard 1
minute,
second.
but it only lasts for technically it's a 1 second if you use it for opening combat, because it goes away immediately and it's gone and you can't use it in combat. So
you deal 10% extra damage from the first attack you deal from it, which is, okay. It's not. I wish it was maybe something like the first mongoose bite used out of camouflage replenishes 2 mongoose. I'm just throwing something out there, right? But something that has something to do with the mechanics of the spec.
yeah.
Instead of just flat damage on a single attack. Like, you won't ever feel that. But you'll probably still do it, because it's the only somewhat powerful DPS, potentially powerful DPS choice in this tier. Unless Sticky Bomb starts to deal proper damage. But right now it scales off spell power. So
I don't know why it does that. Yeah, it's a little bit.
Now it gets a little bit more interesting. You got crows, which I think is... I'm pretty sick of a murder of crows by now. It works like it always has, and it costs the same, and the mechanics linked to it are the same. If it expires before its full duration is expended, you get to use it again. But the thing is, it's kind of expensive, especially a survival. And who cares about crows, right? Especially with the new theme of the survival hunter. There's nothing, beast mastery about it, except for the flanking strike ability, which has a pet component to it.
Yep.
If it's good, we'll use it, but I think it's pretty boring by now, and I don't think it fits any theme, and I don't think it's interesting to use, because it doesn't feel powerful either. Dragon's Fire Trap is a explosive trap replacement, which is basically just buffs it in every way, and it's expands its AoE, and it affects one target, and then it spreads the fire to other targets. And if it deals decent damage, we'll probably use it for any sort of multi-target situation. But it also scales with spell power, so that's a thing. Snake Hunter is the first really potentially interesting choice for Survival Hunter. And it instantly gives you 3 charges of Mongoose Bite, which not only gives you more Mongoose Bites, but it also gives you more opportunity to stack, the buff. But it's on a 1.5 minute cooldown, and it really worked much better for the old survival model, because there the objective was to get 6 stacks and hold on to those 6 stacks for as long as possible. Just giving you 3 instant charges now is not worth as much, especially not on a long cooldown like that. But if they reduce the cooldown to, say, 20 or 30 seconds, it could bring some spice back into the rotation, because you'd actually feel a bit more powerful, and you'd often get up to those 6 stacks nuke fests way more often with your Mongoose Bites memory. So I think I like it, but its cooldown has to be reduced to fit the new survival meta. So the 90 tier is related to sort like AoE and dots.
Yep.
So a survival part of your toolkit is laceration, which is just, it's a... That's so boring. It's a dot.
It's just say what it is. It's
Don't
just
cry.
rend. It's rend.
Yeah, it's rend, and it deals damage, and it has a
rend.
cooldown.
Yep.
It's a dot.
Yep.
And this tier is mostly about laceration and what you can do with that. So butchery causes all targets hit by a carve, which is the survival multi-shot essentially.
Yep.
So it doesn't deal a lot of damage on its own, but with butchery you apply laceration is pretty good damage. So you get to do pretty good cleave damage, I guess, if you could spread laceration to multiple targets. But in the end, it's also pretty boring because carve has no special you can just use it and refresh the dots on however many targets you want. Yeah.
This doesn't sound that great.
Yeah, it's not that great, Moving on to mortal wounds causes laceration. Whenever it ticks, it'll maybe grant you a chance of Mongoose Bite, which sounds pretty cool. What if you could multi-dot with it? And if there are 2 targets up, you could get more Mongoose Bite stacks. But oh wait, it's in the same tier as the one that spreads it with carve. And the dot is on such a cooldown that you can't, it's on a cooldown, so you can't really use it on multiple targets. The duration is slightly longer than the cooldown.
Barely, 2 seconds.
Yeah, 2 seconds. It's like a tick, which has, I guess, double chance of giving you a Mongoose Bite stack. So you could easily do some shuffling around here and do so you can use those 2 together, and you can be an arms warrior. Current day arms warrior, I guess, with the set bonuses. I think that's how it works anyway. You have rend, and rend ticks faster, and it gives you a chance to do a fancy mortal strike proc. And then the serpent sting, which is like butchery, except it's another dot. Yeah, that's essentially it.
It's a different version because it also applies to carve, but it's mostly because of raptor strike. You can raptor strike and you can spread the serpent sting.
Yeah. So it adds, a dot to your toolkit through an ability you already use every 15 seconds. So essentially, it's just flat damage. And another dot to add to your multi-target arsenal, I guess. But you'd for any AoE situation where it seems like this would be attractive, butchery is better. And so maybe it's the best single target choice. I mean, then it'll just be okay, what sims better between mortal wounds for Mongoose Bite stacks or serpent sting for flat damage dot? So yeah.
That's one thing that chat was saying. A couple of people were talking about this too, just to get us almost moved on here. We can't go through every single talent, but they were wondering why there's a lot of talents for survival that you're supposed to fight alongside your pet, but only one ability, 2, I guess, do anything with your pet. Yeah.
And you don't feel the interaction through flanking strike. Essentially, flanking strike is just when you're in a raid, it does a little bit more damage. And the idea is that you and your pet attack at the same time for sort of moderate damage.
Right.
And if you're alone and the target is attacking you, your pet will deal more damage. To try and gain threat, I guess, is the idea. And if it's not, you'll do more damage, because then it just assumes you're in a raid as a tank. You just want to maximize your damage.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel convincing at all, I think. So the final tier aspect of the beast is about flanking strike. And it basically just does so that when you use flanking strike, this is very exciting. Depending on the spec of your pet, which is ferocity for almost all PvE applications, you get a little dot.
There's a lot of dots here.
Yeah, there's a lot of dots, and they have almost no interactions with the rest of the spec.
Yeah, it's just a bleed.
Yeah, it's just a bleed. So you just do a little bit more damage. Super boring, if you ask me. And tenacity, if your pet is trying to tank and it's trying to get threat, well, then it'll also take reduced damage.
Yep.
And cunning, I mean, it snares the target, which is, I guess, pretty powerful because it turns flanking strike into a very powerful version of concussive shot or just any snare, right? So, PvP. I guess.
At least that's something with your pet, though. That's the whole point. Like, you're not a beast mastery hunter, which is like summoning pets and buffing your pets, but at least there you see more here that feels like you are working together with your pet, though.
Yeah, and that's been part of the reason why I'm of not too strong opinion, because there's some people who will discuss this like forever, that I think if any spec should have been the melee spec, why not the beast mastery? If this is what you're going to do with survival anyway, because I could see this working out with beast mastery in a way. It just have to be less boring in a way. But if you apply some of the beast mastery mechanics to a melee, like, I think it'd work out nicely. I don't know what you do with survival then, because 2 melee hunter specs probably wouldn't work out.
Oh, don't say that! Oh my God, all the hunters in the no, we don't even want one. Yeah,
there's rioting in the streets.
Yeah, there would be.
Yeah. Spitting Cobra is essentially, I mean,
it's searing
like
totem.
Crows. Yeah,
Searing totem.
Searing totem. So it's a dot, essentially, and when it ticks, or well, not even when it ticks actually, just when it's active, you gain a bit of focus. So it has a bit more involvement, I guess. It generates focus for you and deals a bit of damage.
Yep.
But again, it's just, okay, does this amount of focus we get, is that worth more than the dot in aspect of the beast ferocity flanking strike? So yeah, let's theorycraft that, and everyone will just pick the best option. Unless expert trapper, which just improves all your traps across the board, and even improves the talented traps, so steel trap and dragon's fire trap.
Right.
Freezing trap basically just slows everyone once the trap breaks. Explosive trap gets more damage, and like a tar trap, it has a chance to like root people when they walk through. They're normally just slowed when they walk through, and there's a chance to get
entanglement's back, baby.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah,
or entrapment. Sorry, it's called entrapment. Yeah.
Yeah, and steel trap, more damage. And Dragon's Fire Trap, which that's probably the most significant buff because it spreads the bulk of the damage to more targets as well.
Right.
But it's a pretty diverse DPS tier because one is about flanking strike, another is like just a dart, and then this middle is about all your traps. So the 100 like row or column, I don't know, of talents is diverse. I guess
it's just dots. It's just dots.
Yeah,
it's like everything's like a dot. Like
nothing is convincing or interesting besides maybe Snake Hunter.
Yeah.
And all these talents, maybe Way of the Moknathal, and Snake Hunter are the only ones that stand out.
It needs some je ne sais quoi. It needs something because right now you're just like in melee with your pet, and you're just kind of like, "What's up, dude? What you doing over there? You biting it?" Yeah, I'm hitting with my pole arm. Cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't have something, but I don't know. How about you, Jack? What about Discipline Priest? You want to walk me through this kind of stuff? Because we just got some changes recently. But I want to go through both of these specs, survival and discipline because they have the most changes of all the specs. So, what
Definitely.
are you seeing so far here for the same kind of thing? Any dead talents? Any issues with things? Any tweaks that need to be made? What are you looking at here for discipline?
So for discipline in the 15 row, this is like one of my favorite rows. Not so much because of the impact that it brings, but because this is Blizzard's wet dream for what every single talent row should be.
Right.
It's really cool. So you have the Penitent, which penance may be cast on a friendly target, healing them for yada yada. So defensive penance. So this is really bad talent in competitive rating and stuff like that. But the best part about it is it's something that people are going to use and they're going to talent into a lot because they miss defensive penance. So
Sure.
instead of saying, nah, deal with it, they're like, okay, here's a talent if you really want it that bad.
Because you want
So.
to caveat that penance
Mhm.
by default is only castable as a damage source unless
That's
you
right.
take the penitent. You
That's
cannot cast penance on your friends. You have to do it offensively. Yeah.
Yes. And in competitive rating, competitive disc play, that's what you should be doing is casting it offensively.
Sure.
If the tuning works out to be that way. That's what it's intended. You have
Right.
castigation, which is meant to be for single target, single target bosses, take that. And then you have schism, I never know.
I think it's schism.
Schism.
Yeah.
Well, that's for AoE. So we'll theorycraft and be like, at X targets, you will do this. You will use schism.
Yep.
And at 1 or 2 targets, you use castigation. You just cast it on 1 because it'll do more damage.
Mhm.
It's great. You have a choice. You're going to switch around between castigation and schism quite frequently. If you really, really want it, the penitent's there for you. And Holy has something similar in the 15 row, but we'll get there in time. 30, nothing really that new. You have masochism. When you cast Shadow Man on yourself, it deals no damage. Meh. I'll talk a little bit in a second about why masochism and the artifact talent with Shadow Man both really suck. Yeah, Body and Soul and Angelic Feather. We all know what those are. 45 or PvP stuff. Generally not anything competitive. Maybe there'll be a Dominate Mind thing like Blast Furnace was. Kind of cool.
Yeah,
I
you get a
wouldn't mind.
pet bar, baby.
It's so sick when it's your pet.
Yeah.
It's a lot more micromanaging, but it's so cool when it's your pet. I love it.
Yep.
The only problem is you can't really tell them to jump somewhere. So the main use I've had for Dominate Mind in Hellfire Citadel is waiting outside and mind controlling Alliance into the lava and then just swimming them down so that they die.
Wow.
But you can't really do that when it's your pet. So it's a little bit of a problem, but I have faith in you, Blizzard. Give me a jump button or something.
They have the move to button, don't they?
They have a move too, but if you're on the bridge, you can't direct him to go into the water without him walking around the bridge, down the hill into the water.
Maybe it'll be a PvP talent there, Jack. How about that?
They'd make me have to PvP.
I do want to make sure you bring up Shining Force, though, because this thing is it's Thunderstorm for a Disc Priest on a friendly ally.
Mhm.
It's a 20-yard knockback. It is insane.
So wait, it knocks him away 20 yards?
Yeah. You didn't test this yet?
I used it. I didn't go in very far.
Dude,
I don't know if there was something slowing them or rooting them or something.
It
But
could have.
I just saw it like a. What is it? It's kind of like what do the mages have that knocks them in the air and melee hates them for it?
Oh, Supernova.
Supernova. That's what I thought it was. At least when I used it, I was like, oh, they get knocked in the air.
No, if there's nothing obscuring,
If they get knocked 20 yards, I'm gonna have so much
if
fun.
there's nothing obscuring, if there's nothing obscuring their path, it's a 20-yard knockback. It's blink distance.
I want to be knocking people off cliffs. Please put the instances right next to cliffs.
No,
Blizzard.
but this was the thing. So you can grip someone to you, but then knock all the crap away from them. It's so
Yes.
you can't.
Yes.
I mean, it could be trolly for questing, but it's also
it's
really
gonna be
good
great.
for if someone rips aggro, you can pull them to you and then knock all the stuff away from them and pull them to you for safety. It just gives you a cool little metagame with priesty stuff.
For
so.
challenge modes, it'd be cool. That'd actually be really cool for challenge modes.
Maybe. All right,
I didn't
60s.
think of it that way.
Go for
60s. These are actually really boring to me. You have Mindbender and Solace, which have been around forever, and then you have the old version of Rapture iterated into a talent.
Yep.
So what old Rapture used to do was originally it was 125% of the mana cost of Powered Shield would get refunded to you if it was completely absorbed, which was awesome. Oh my god, your Powered Shield was mana regen. It was insane. Then they nerfed it to 100%, so you'd still just use it every single time because it was free. And now it's 1% of your max mana, which I believe is like a fourth of the cost of the Powered Shield at the moment, if I remember right. All these are going to be iterated on. The nice thing about Mindbender is that the damage it deals and the damage that Powered Solace deals works off Atonement.
Yep.
Which is pretty sick. And if I recall correctly,
yeah,
let me double check. I'm pretty sure the your Mindbender damage actually counts as shadow damage, if I remember correctly.
I think he does. It's called a shadow ability. But
yeah,
so Mindbender becomes with Atonement like a short form like healing cooldown and mana battery, whereas Shield Discipline is literally just like, hey, I'm going to get 10% of my mana back over the course of a minute if you cast it on every 6 seconds. Then Solace is just Solace.
Solace just Solace. So I think if they actually want to make it competitive with each other, they need to give very distinct roles to it. So for instance, Shield Discipline will have to be the highest individual mana regen because it doesn't give you any damage, right?
Right.
So you're balancing damage and mana regen.
Sure.
So, and in effect healing from the damage. So if you want it to be that way, Shield Discipline would be like really high on mana regen. So it's your highest mana regen. Maybe Mindbender will be burst / in between. And then Solace will be like highest damage because it's quote unquote the hardest to use because you have to use it on cooldown. It's another button you have to keep on cooldown as much as possible.
Yeah.
Something to be very distinct about it. The other important thing to note is that there's an artifact trait which will actually put a powered shield on yourself. But that powered shield is called Share in the Light, is actually its own spell, and that does not give you mana from that powered shield.
From Shield Discipline.
It's from Share in the Light. So that's one thing.
That would probably be 2, because that's 20% of your max mana every minute then. If your own personal shield was popping every 6 seconds.
Every 6 seconds.
Yeah, because right now, like, Mindbender
it's costing nothing to cast that second shield on yourself.
Correct.
So,
right.
It would be insane if that happened.
All right, what's next?
75s. We have Power Infusion and Twist of Fate, which we've seen forever. And to me, they're just same as they've always been. You know, we're used to them. We've had them forever. I'm ecstatic that they're gone from Holy Priests. I just kind of wish that they would make something new. They're both pretty good. I don't think that they're going to hold up a candle to Contrition. But if Twist of Fate procced off damage for Discipline, it would be insane. You know, it would have been insane. But unfortunately, it does not. So we are brought to Contrition, which is awesome.
Well, the question is, does Atonement healing under 30% health on the target actually proc?
Oh, yeah.
Because you can... Yeah, because you could just plea someone at low HP, and then all of a sudden you gain the extra damage, which then would affect your Atonement. So,
but I think a lot of it will depend on the fights, and this is really one of the things that Holy had a very big issue with in all of Warlords of Draenor is that Twist of Fate generally was the best option. So if you got very high uptime, you were running with the big dogs, basically. And if you did not, you were horrible. So overhealing really put a big damper on it. And it was nice that when everyone's in danger, it's there, you know? So when you need it, it's there to help. But there's also the unreliability factor. So not that desirable.
Okay.
With Contrition, though, Contrition is like... It originally was 5 seconds. Actually, like 2 days ago, they nerfed it to 3 seconds. And there was a huge uproar of people. But I think that Contrition's actually where it should be. To be a legit talent and actually open it up for some competition with the other ones. Because at the moment, like, I click cast to use Voodoo. So I'll be using shift click, right click, whatever. I'm not able to use add-ons on the alpha, so I'm using mouse over. So for me, I'm like a little bit slower because a lot of my healing now is switched to my left hand instead of clicking on things with my right hand with my mouse hand. So I know I'm playing a little bit slower and I'm not playing as well. So when I'll see like, oh, I lose 2 seconds on my atonement now. Oh, this sucks. It's so much harder for me. But a lot of it is also learning it. You know, you have to learn this and get comfortable with it and stop tunnel visioning DPS to balance out when you're going back to applying atonement. So that's one important thing, and I'm not as concerned that contrition was nerfed. I'm actually not surprised that it was nerfed. So to me, I'd probably be taking contrition constantly. It is kind of overheal in 5-mans. It's kind of overheal. Maybe for like just straight up boss damage, power infusion might be a little bit stronger, but you're also not really taking advantage of the mana returns. So, because it's also
Fair
5
enough.
because you can drink.
Right.
So that's kind of the food for thought. And like we'll see as they go on. Contrition is just really, really nice. It's giving you more smites, it's giving you just more penances, just more time to deal damage, more time to Shadow Word Pain multiple targets or Purge the Wicked or
Right.
you know. There's so many more options that are opened up with Contrition that it looks like it's going to be mandatory in raids, but I'm okay with that because it's just a nice buffer window that you get. And you're paying a price for it too. So
It's definitely true. I mean, contrition is obviously a passive where it gives you more time, but you're not gaining a DPS/healing CD, or you're not gaining a amp in your DPS/healing for healing low health targets. So it's definitely a trade-off.
Speaking of passives,
Yeah.
so if you looked through all of the talents, just about all of them, they all at least have one passive. And I believe the Warcraft devs talked about this at some point where they wanted to be at least one passive in every single tree for most everybody.
Sure.
And big thank you to Zozen for pointing this out. But there's one for Disc that does not have a passive.
Oh, what tree is that, Jack?
That's 90 tree with
Oh,
Halo and Divine Star, you know, usual nice little balance. And then Clarity Will, which is still here. So Clarity Will is just, it's one of those talents that was like, I would say it's probably balanced, you know. You are paying a very big price for a stackable shield,
sure.
right? But doing so, you completely throw in the dumpster any kind of class fantasy, any kind of way that you are actually intending to play the class as they're talking about, and you're just sitting there and spamming shields, which goes all the way back to Warlords, which we're trying to avoid to begin with. So that is a big issue to me.
Yep. Goes all the way back to mop.
Yeah, that's true.
Just mop shield spam. That's all. Yeah.
Just why are we back? Like, why is this on the tree? And
physically distressed, Jack.
it is a little bit, yeah, because there will be fights if Clarity Will stays on it. That guess what, you Disc Priests, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna spam Clarity Will for big portions of the fight, and you're gonna watch all your atonements tick off. You're gonna deal no damage in that time, and you're just stacking up a shield for a raid mechanic. And if it's strong enough, maybe you'll just be spam tank healing. I don't think that's very enjoyable. You know, anybody done Iron Maidens? Any?
I mean,
No?
for Iron Maidens, I'll defend the fight and say that's obviously like a 5 seconds at base cast time, and you're prepping for one ability, and that helped that. I wouldn't say game, but I would say abuse absorbs to effectively mitigate that hard ability. But
Completely destroy a fight.
right, but as you are with Clarity of Will, it's like all you would do is like Clarity Shield. Like you just tab target through your grid, right? Clarity Shield, Clarity Shield, Clarity Shield, Clarity Shield. Just yay. So
Yeah,
exactly. I hope it goes away too. I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on that.
And we already have a nice passive that was just removed from Disc in the recent patch, which would be a nice addition to the 90 tree.
What's that?
Revelation. Revelation was just removed a couple days ago from being baseline. What it did was 30% chance whenever you smite or mind blast to reset the cooldown on penance, which is pretty fun. They could change the tuning. Like, the tuning is a big deal. Like, but I'm more worried about what they intend an ability to do. and then the rest comes later. So
Right.
if they put in Revelation in that 90 slot instead of Clarity of Will, I would be ecstatic. I hope other people would be ecstatic about it, because you also get the ability to be pumping out more damage. If you're really just focusing on damage, you could do that. Like, it'd be a really good 5-man talent. It could be just a really good heavy damage talent, really.
Right.
And I'm sure that they can adjust the tuning to, equal out Halo, equal out D-Star, or something like that.
I was wondering about what I was testing. I didn't know why Halo wouldn't do some damage and do some healing or something.
I would mind that. People were really
'Cause it only
clamoring
does healing
for
now.
Divine Star and for Halo to apply Atonement, which I think is a really bad idea. Just because there's no limit to how many targets you can hit. So, for instance, you're on a stack fight, right? You're on a stack fight, you cast D-Star through a stacked up group, and there's an artifact trait called Sins of the Many, which is you deal 1% more damage for every person who has Atonement on them. So you're dealing 20% more damage in this little window.
Yeah, no, that's a little bit.
All kinds of problems. Even if they make it with like Holy Word Radiant or Powered Radiance, where it's half the duration, like that causes all kinds of problems.
I mean,
I'd love it if they deal a little bit of damage.
like if D-Star did damage going out and healed coming in based on the damage it dealt.
Let's not have that. Let's not screw up Surge D-Star for Holy Priests.
Oh no. Okay.
But if it dealt a little bit of damage, I would be pretty happy with that.
Okay.
So,
well, let's wrap up with 100 so we can get to some Q&A after this.
alrighty. Purge the Wicked. Purge the Wicked's a lot of fun. It replaces Shadowed Pain, and it's nice because it lets you self micromanage a little bit, in that you're able to push out where you want your dots to be going, and it's something that can like really build up. And if Revelation comes back, you'll be able to penance a lot more, and you'll be able to spread it a lot more. So it's a lot of fun. I kind of hope that the initial application is strong enough so that you can like override the dot, because it feels kind of weird. Like, to me, it feels like a holy fire when I use it.
Well, I mean, it looks like it is Holy Fire on the right now, the graphic anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
So then, but it's not really worth casting in the current tuning, and obviously current tuning will change. But it's not really worth casting if there's already the dot on that single target. So
Correct.
with Grace is something that I guess kind of has to be in. Non-atonement healing and absorption by 30%, but it also just seems very lost. So maybe there will be a niche fight, and maybe they want it so that Clarity will pair with Grace at some time. But I'm not really a big fan of this.
Sure.
It's kind of a meh talent. And Covenant, whenever you have abilities that are changed by a talent, so like Purge the Wicked, right? You always want to see it as like a net improvement. But I don't really see Shadow Covenant being that much better when it doesn't give Atonement. Like, that's one really annoying part of Shadow Covenant and using it, is that, yes, you, like, especially in 5-mans, yes, you heal for a lot, but now you have to apply Atonement to everybody so you could top off that shell. So Powered Radiance does apply Atonement for half the duration, and that was also recently nerfed. And it becomes 3 targets instead of the 5, or I guess 6. It'd be U plus 5. But it's just annoying that it doesn't apply Atonement at all, and it would be potentially OP if it did. So they'd have to do something with the numbers on it, because ideally, you Shadow Covenant, you have a big burst of healing, and then you're able to top it off with your Atonement, so you smite immediately afterwards.
Yeah, I was curious about that, because it looks like it's only really good if you couple it with someone else, like if someone else is tranking.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
if someone else is using a dehem, then
the nice thing about
you
those,
nerf your healer's healing, though, but you will heal for a ton, because they'll be healing off your shield.
A lot of times, whenever there's like extremely high damage, it takes a second for your raid cooldowns to kick in before they start pushing people's health pools up, substantially. So
True.
Shadow Covenant is a really good way of giving you a little bit of a blanket, so that you can push people's health pools up enough, and then the Trank takes care of the rest.
Right.
The him takes care of the rest. Speaking of him, I would not mind if was removed. I know.
Only for Holy, though. They need to have their raid cooldown.
We could have a raid cooldown called Apotheosis, and it could be a personal cooldown, and we could look amazing, absolutely amazing, in our little holy form. All right, an empowered holy form, something like that, I would be great. I would love it very much.
Yeah, I've heard about the apotheosis dream that you guys have been talking about. Yeah,
It is a dream. It's exactly what we wanted.
It is.
Exactly what I wanted.
Well, alrighty then. I'm gonna move us along here so we can get to some Q&A afterwards. It's a lot more information I thought we'd have to go through. I put more in these notes, but for those of you who are wondering, we were only really focusing on the two most changed specs for both Priest and Hunter today. And these series, the Let's Talk Legion, this is volume 1. Each week I'll bring on 2 guests, and we'll talk about specs that are evolved with those 2 guests that have changed. So next week I hope to bring on a tank, preferably a Guardian Druid, and then a Rogue as well. So, but we can only talk about so much right now. I'll be doing a lot of these over the next couple of months, so don't worry too much if you're not hearing about your spec right off the bat, but it takes time. Only do 1 show a week, right? So, but I will take some time right now to plug some things and some websites that you may not have heard about. First one, of course, is many of you might be watching us right now on MMO Champion, but if you aren't, or if you don't have MMO Champion bookmarked for whatever reason, they cover a lot of stuff with Legion. There's a Fat Boss's preview of Neltharion's Lair, Dungeon Journal updates. They cover Blue Post. They have this is actually pretty good. I watched the Rob Kaczynski's World of Warcraft Saved My Life on Conan interview. It's pretty good stuff. There's my Marksman Hunter preview, but they have all the data mining, all the different artifacts, all the different new class hall updates, new mounts, new models, new data mine stuff all the time. Gigantic posts. The new freaking artifact weapon for Demonology Warlocks, this Minari head. So good. But MMO Champion is your place to go. Look at all this stuff. It's all the strings that were on the last build. If you're big into the math and you want to know about how all this stuff works, it keeps going. It keeps going. If you want to read all this stuff, please feel free as well. And if you've missed any of my past content on FinalBossTV, it's all, of course, on our YouTube channel. You can go look on the playlists. You can also in chat right here. When you guys are in chat, you can type !guide, or you can go to the guide command button, and you can get a list of all the different episodes I've done in the past, special guest episodes, interviews from BlizzCon, as well as all the different episodes that I've done for Legion coverage. It's all put together and organized for my raid testing, all my different class previews, all the different stuff that I put together is all on my channel guide as well, if you are looking for more content. All right there for you. And I'll be shouting out my assistant producer patrons as well at the end of the stream. But if you want to help keep me going and do what I'm doing here, I have a whole bunch of unlockables and special things and information on my Patreon page to try to make this my full-time gig. If you want to check that out, please feel free. And those of you that are tossing me a couple bucks every month to help this become what I do, I thank you so much for that. But now, let's go over some Q&A with chat. We've got about, I want to say 20 minutes. Take some questions. If chat has some questions for us today. I had some pre-made questions, but we're not going to have time to get through all the stuff. And I had like the Beast Mastery bonus round. Do you have any like early thoughts while chat gives us some questions real quick, Azor, about Beast Mastery for what you've looked at so far?
Beast Mastery is probably the hardest spec to figure out how it will actually play based on the abilities we've gotten.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I'll come back to you when I get to play it.
That's true. I
think it's thematically it's strong, but like when it comes to playing it, honestly, I have no idea.
It looks like it's just gonna be a lag fest because you'll have so many pets. Oh man, yeah. Stampede.
I'm sure they'll do some technical stuff to hopefully fix that.
I hope so too, but I do wonder because like if you I talked to Brutal about this and he's like, "Oh, I can't wait, Beast Mastery Hunter," but yeah, it's weird because you can read the talents and read the spells, but they're gonna have to really actually play this spec to really feel what it does. It's a little bit awkward, yeah.
Marksmanship was the same way, and I had a different idea going in than how it actually ended up being when it came to playing it.
The zoo spec, exactly. Yeah. And there was a big question that was coming up a lot during the show beforehand that was asked, and a couple of people were saying as well, which I don't know how to answer this question because I sound like I'm a dick when I answer it, but like, what do you feel about the Legion ability pruning? Because I'm all for it. Some of the classes have been pruned and it looks really good. Obviously, because I'll be testing every single spec in the game 3 times. I have issues with enhancement because I've been playing it for 9 years and it just has like 4 different hunger for blood mechanics right now. I'm kind of like, ugh. But I mean, what do you think? Has the ability pruning so far for like, I guess you can say survival is one you can really attribute this to, Azor. But like, what do you think? Is it?
I think that it's been. I think it's been enough. I don't think it needs the stuff the aggressive pruning that Legion is introducing.
Mhm.
Because I don't think I think you need to, when you get into the game and the new class and everything, the fact that there are many abilities means that there'll probably be a while, they'll probably go a long time before you've actually used them all in a, like before you've mastered it, so to speak. And I don't mind that. But I don't think it needs any more because I think it removes what it means to get into a new class or just get into a class in general, that you don't have as many, like you'll look through the spell book right now and you'll see, oh, distraction shot. Okay, well, I probably won't use that for a long time to come. But when that's the criteria they're removing spells on for the most part, is they ever use this? And I don't think there's a problem with having something that you use rarely.
Mhm.
Because Distracting Shot has been used in this expansion. You used it for Blackrock Foundry. At least in my guild, I used it to get engineers like that, because they spawn far away from the tank, and the tank has to be in the spot. And the engineers, when they spawn, sometimes they start running to the other side, and I'm supposed to pick them up and stuff like that. Like an additional little misdirection, if you will.
Yeah. That's
Just
fair.
an example.
What do you think about you, Jack, for Priest? Anything that's like sticking out to you? Is it feeling okay? Because the biggest thing about the pruning, I think, is the underlying issue people are like not everyone's saying is that some classes have had like passives or old spells pruned, quote unquote pruned, and have made like a talent or they're an artifact perk now. So like, I've had this for years. Why do I have to talent into to get it again? Right?
Yeah. I actually haven't really had that much of a problem with ability tuning or pruning, rather. Like, they removed Lightwell, which I know a lot of people were upset about. But to me, it's something that you put down and you do nothing with.
True.
You are not able to actually click it. Well, it was not viable for you to click it. People talk about training the raid to click it, and
nope.
I think they're smoking something, because I don't know how to train people to do that. If you find out, PM me. We'll work it out. I'm completely fine with that. I wish, honestly, that they would remove Divine Hymn and give us more of a personal cooldown. And I think whenever you have abilities that gain some semblance or some resemblance to something else that another class has, they're going to judge it based on how much it does. So what is closest compared to D-Hymn? Trank. How much does D-Hymn do? How much does Trank do? Everyone sees that Trank does substantially more. Well, everyone's going to be like, well, we don't want a Holy Priest because Trank's better.
Right.
You know? And that's all you hear. To me, I'd much rather have it so that I have an ability of my own that I am able to use, and the power of it depends on how good of a player I am with using it. So that is my hope, my dream, that they will consider Apotheosis being put in baseline, Divine Hymn removed, and something else put in the level 100 tree, something like that.
What's the new iteration of what they want Apotheosis to be? Because it sounded originally to me a lot like just Ascendance for the
Just not Ascendance! Like, it was says it's Ascendance!
You gotta make it something, because you can't... Holy Priest doesn't do DPS to heal. That would be Discipline. So... What's like the goal that you want Apotheosis to be, to replace this D-Hymn where you stand there and you're like, get healed?
So Apotheosis increases the effects of Serendipity by 200%. Serendipity is cooldown reduction for your holy words.
Right.
Just because you turn into something else does not mean it's Ascendance. I've had like 20 people say this to me. It has like no resemblance to it in what it does. You don't look the same. Just because there's tree and ascend doesn't mean it's like, oh my god, we're all the same thing. It's homogenization. Like, please.
Jack be triggered. I'm doing this on purpose. Because this happens a lot.
I know. And people love seeing this. But it drives me bananas because there's no semblance to it at all.
Right.
And I'd very much like to have something that I have control over, that you're able to use, that is powerful in and of itself.
Sure.
You know. and I don't think it's used enough, or it's potent enough. So
There was one discipline priest question that came up here a little while ago from Northern Man, because of how this is like a leveling question. I'm not really sure if it's gonna like be super impactful. They'll still but I guess apparently, disc priests don't get atonement until level 38.
ooh,
So like, how do you
does feel
disc
really
without
weird.
atonement until level 38? Like, is that
I guess you're spamming Shadow Mend.
Shadow Mend and Shield?
Shadow Mend and Shield, pretty much. I think. When do you get Penance at 10?
Ugh.
Shadow Mend at 24. Actually, that's a big problem because you have nothing to directly heal.
You take the
The
Penitent.
plea. You'd have to take the Penitent.
Yeah.
Like the second you hit 15.
Yeah, you would.
So until you get Shadow Mend, and then you could use Shadow Mend, and then you're waiting. Yeah, they should give Atonement like very early on. I agree.
Like it should
That's
be like
really ridiculous.
straight up, right when you get Penance, you should get it. Like
You should get it. I agree.
At 10, you should get it. Yeah. Because until then, like, you have plea, whatever. You could spam. It's not a big deal,
Yeah.
I guess. But
I mean, it's like a little bit of healing. I mean, it depends on tuning and whatever, but you know. Somebody asked a really good question earlier.
Go for it.
Where was it? All right. Are you going to miss heavy focus on Prayer of Mending bouncing around everywhere with Holy Priests?
Oh.
Which I like that question. And Prayer of Mending got removed for Discipline, which to me is fine because you very rarely used it anyway. But for Holy Priest, I'm kind of okay with it. And it's nice that you don't have Words of Mending because, again, Words of Mending didn't really have a big impact on what you're doing. It's just like, hey, we get extra this. Just innately for free, you know, whatever. So I'd much rather have talents that augment what you're doing, improve what you're doing, things like that. And there are a couple things that already work off Prayer of Mending, like Benediction, where 30% chance is pretty high when you're throwing out a 5-stack of Prayer of Mending to be able to hit other targets, including the Artifact talent or Artifact trait, which has a chance that Prayer of Mending won't lose a charge. Like things like that are really nice.
I mean, it's the same thing. You're asking for the same thing that Azor and I just went over when we were talking about Survival Hunter. Is that like there's so little synergistic benefit from it's just like here, this gives a dot, or this gives a different dot, or this gives a stacking personal dot. Yeah, like nothing that feels like it's working together, which is kind of how I have a gripe with Enhancement Shaman right now because we have a lot of abilities that just like put up a buff. Yeah, but is that the enhancement fantasy? I'm enhancing myself, but maintenance buffs aren't necessarily incredibly endearing if you have 4 of them. Like 1 or 2, you know, yeah. But 4, it's kind of. So
I know a lot of people have concerns about split damage and healing with Discipline, and honestly, I think it's going to be a very good thing, but they need to be very specific with giving a niche to Discipline so that it's not mandatory for every fight. And if it is mandatory for every fight, maybe it's the only one that's mandatory for every fight. I guess that'd be okay. But how Holy works with that, because it's so unique in that it's the only Priest is the only healing class that has 2 healing specs.
Sure.
You know, you have to give some kind of give and take with that. Like one of the biggest buffs to Holy Priests was removal of Paladin and Illuminated Healing, removal of Divine Aegis, Powered Shield getting a cooldown. Like nerfing absorbs buffs Holy Priests. Just how it works. You know?
I think to put a similarity between the two of your classes, it'll be interesting to see where survival falls in the grand scheme of things. Like I'm sure if you're like a heroic raider and you want to play survival and you have like a 30-man raid guild and you're doing normals and heroics, survival's probably fine. From a mythic standpoint, I think though you're gonna have to. What if Beast Mastery has better AOE, and Marksman has better single target, right? So that'll be your breakpoint for the niches between the two classes. Whereas Discipline and Holy might be better for just actual AOE healing, and Discipline's better for single target healing. So you'll have that back and forth. Or, which is going to be a sore spot for Mistweaver monks, is that if you can drop, quote unquote, drop a healer for a fight, Holy Priest goes Discipline. Whereas you can't you can't do that anymore with Red Crane Monk. It's gone. You can't fist weave anymore. So the monks can do damage, but you don't do any healing.
The other concern is actually double disc is actually even more of a concern now because of how much damage that they deal.
Their atonements don't share though, do they?
They don't.
Okay, good.
But just the fact that they can deal a ton of damage and do substantial amount of healing. So that's one of those things that needs to be addressed so that there is not that popularity with it forever. Because they need to give appropriate love to Holy as they can to Disc, and the things that make Disc unique can just make Disc mandatory or make Disc like insane so that you're gonna stack multiple ones.
As Zosten said, triple disc dream.
Yeah, he did. He was doing testing with triple disc. Not even kidding.
Stack discs, tanks die. I would probably say they would not die.
Yeah, go about that Shadowman, man.
Because you remember,
those patters.
Powered Shield has no weakened soul debuff. So
Powered Shield's not exceptionally powerful.
I mean, for immediately applying atonement to
buffer.
Tanks and keeping it up all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'll always have it there. I know, like, some people, Mr. Zolvolt in chat, he was going with Grace and he was spamming Clarity of Will on tanks, Powered Shield on tanks constantly, things like that, which will do a ton of single target healing.
Sure.
But you're not doing anything with Atone in the meantime. Like,
it makes your mastery worthless.
It really does.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Raid testing real quick. Azor, have you raid tested bosses?
I've raid tested one of them, the Scorpion.
How did that go for you so far? I've done all three. I want other people's opinion on how the raid testing went. How do you feel? Like, YouTube comments from mine were like, "Oh, these bosses are all the same. It's just same crap, just different boss." And I'm like, "Have you played
we
WoW
have
before?"
mostly, we have mostly tested those, single target, early in the instance kinds of bosses. The Scorpion was pretty hectic, especially in the first couple of pulls when you didn't quite understand how the clouds worked. But then you eventually worked out that you can't get knocked back into them because it'll release more Scorpions than you need to. And the Scorpions are pretty damn powerful. But it's really just an AoE fest at times, and then it becomes a single target nuke fest. When
Mini Scorps left side.
Yeah. And other than that, it's just a pretty basic Morchuk fight. You do the line of sight when he does the shockwave. At least there's another mechanic tied to that thing, because it's not that you take so much damage from the shockwave, it's that you spawn a bunch of ads.
Yep.
Which is always fun, because then when you screw up, it fucks the whole raid.
That's true.
Yeah. Which is a lovely mechanic, of course.
People were getting all uppity about it, but I was like, A, Nathendra is the first boss, and B, Mr. Ron is the first boss of the two respective raids. So, like, how hard are they going to be? How mechanically complex?
First tier.
Yeah, first tier.
They're really not that crazy hard. A lot of the bosses.
I think the Scorpion might have been a bit overtuned in a way.
Oh, I'm
or
sure.
Maybe just mechanically complex compared to, say, like the Butcher or Kargath or, Gruul.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's a good boss, and I think that also having, researched the other fights and all that, I think no one can really complain about Hellfire Citadel boss mechanics, and general rating was pretty good, and I think they're continuing that trend. So I think the rating side of things is promising. I just hope that the classes can keep up and everything.
I'm in the boat, which is kind of a touchy subject, that I actually feel that, like, all rating across the board should kind of be, like, made easier. Like, I'm not a huge fan of, like, the high octane mythic where, like, one, like, oopsie doodle wipes the whole raid. Like, I'm also not a huge fan of, like, 15-minute long boss encounters. Damn it, freaking Mythic Margok, man. I'm just not.
That was a great fight to heal. That was a fantastic fight to heal.
Really? You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Like, for damage patterns and for the length of the fight. I mean, if you don't have that many fights, like, I think they should have more fights with constant damage, because if you ask any healers who played all the tiers of this expansion, they'll say, my favorite fights to heal, probably in your top 5, top 3, are going to be Blast Furnace and Margok, right? Constant damage, very long fight where you need to be conservative, like very conservative. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Interesting. I mean,
it's hell wiping at the last phase and having to spend 10 minutes of pulls, like 10 minutes to get back to that point. But the type of healing, and I think long fights do have a place. You know, 1 or 2 a tier, I'm perfectly fine with.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think I'm more upset with like Mythic Zul'Harrak style encounters.
Oh hell yeah! I hate that fight.
Like that's
Yeah.
it's I don't
Nothing to heal.
know. Well, nothing to heal but from your perspective. But I mean, less than half of the whole population of the game, which is kind of a split because PvP and PvE. But even more so than less than that, even raid ever. So it's kind of weird. Is like the barrier to entry too difficult? Are there too many difficulties? Because you have LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic. Or even like normal, they did kind of reverse nerf normal this past expansion with like removing abilities. So I think that's the right thing to do. But I'm always curious how raid is going to work in the future because I feel like they just keep like adding on crap to make it harder, quote unquote. And it's just like it just makes it kind of obnoxious.
I think in a lot of ways, it's hard to get people to push themselves to go do this stuff because it's a lot of time commitment. It's a lot of time, focus, learning what you're doing to make that jump from LFR to normal to heroic to mythic.
Right.
And I even had a lot of experiences with people if they want to talk to me about like priests and stuff, and they're like afraid to ask for help. They're afraid to look for help. They're trying to focus on like only what they're doing, or they're saying, "Oh, I'm not a mythic raider. I can't do that. Like, I'm not that good of a player," and they don't try to be. So, I think in some ways, when you're throwing everybody into the jungle with like
Okay.
everybody else,
Right.
you know, and then you're in LFR for 2 hours clearing the instance, and people are calling each other trash or whatever, you know, like. It doesn't really give people the tools to help themselves to move up into this stuff because there is a huge dearth, at least in the U.S. scene, of like really good mythic raiders.
Yeah.
Like WoD hit it really hard.
It's very good. Very true. All right, I'm going to give you guys a second to plug your respective communities where people can find out more hunter and priest knowledge before we get out of here. So, Jack, I'll start with you. Is there a priest Discord by chance, or is there any great
There
websites or
is.
forums out there that where should people go to check out?
There's all
Priest
those
stuff.
things.
You fraud. You already know the answer.
There is a priest Discord. It is for howtopriest.com, and I can have some fancy schmancy links in here.
Sure.
once I learn
I'll
how-
link them in the YouTube description box as well.
All right. Howtopriest.com, along with the Discord for howtopriest. Any kind of questions for any sort of priests can be found there. And I am writing the guides for Discipline and Holy. I'm also partnering up with healinc.net, which is a newer website which is dedicating just for healers. So I'm going to be adding my holy guides to that website as well, and that'll be in Legion where they'll start broadcasting those.
Very good.
If you have questions, Twitters, howtopriest.com, everywhere.
Azortharion, how
And-
about hunter stuff?
Yeah, hunters have a Discord, and I'm gonna link it in chat as I speak right now. And yeah, you can ask questions for like the general community there. Just get involved. I think it's the biggest class Discord around, so hunters prevail.
Okay.
So yeah, well, you can get invested with the community there. If you want to ask me any like personal hunter questions or whatever, you can go to ask.fm/Azortharion, and that's sort of my question asking portal. If you think your question may have been answered before, please check, the question answering history.
Ask him
As for
all the same
finding-
questions.
Yeah. Oh god. As for finding any general information about hunters and discussion and stuff like that, if you want to really participate, the MMO Champion Hunter forums is where it's at in that sort of things. And for general chattery and occasionally figuring some theory crafty things out, head up for the Discord. So yeah, you can find my own Marksmanship Hunter guide, because Marksmanship is the rating spec right now, on this fancy link, which I'm gonna send right now.
It's actually linked in the channel guide as well.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh,
well,
that
there you
one,
go.
yeah. I
You
have
can
your
just do-
I have your Google Doc as well in the channel
Oh,
guide.
yeah. You should update to that one because it's much better to browse and stuff.
Oh, well then.
But yeah.
I mean, I'll be doing all that for Legion. I'll be updating as many class guides as I can and putting them as a channel like exclamation point thing in my guide. So I'll be getting that in the future. But yeah, that's a good point. But I think that's going to do it. If you are a patron, you'll know that there was a lot more in the show notes to talk about. But holy crap, there's lots to talk about, and there's not enough time. I'm hitting the button right there for you. So thank you all for tuning in to episode number 108, which is volume 1 of Let's Talk Legion here on Final Boss TV. If you want to find out more about the coming up episodes, of course, be sure to follow the stream right here, or follow us on Twitter or Facebook and know when we're going live, or know who the guests coming up will be. Again, I'm hoping for a tank and a rogue next week. Talk about the rogue changes and some tanking changes, and then I'll keep rotating around. It's always like, you know, ranged oriented, like a healer or a ranged DPS, and a melee and a tank. So we'll keep it in the same, like, looking at the butt from really close and looking at the butt from really far away for boss mobs. So with that in the future, we're on the table real quick again. There's Azortharion again. He played the ukulele before the stream started, so if you missed that, you're gonna be here earlier. You can go follow him on.
Yeah, there's no way that's ending up.
Not made online. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Cheers for bringing me on again, and I hope to maybe see you in Legion.
Absolutely. You can go follow him on Twitter at Azortharians with a Z on the end. Make sure the Z is there. You'll find him. But thank you very much for being on the show, sir. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise.
And then there's Jack. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at AutomaticJak. Make sure to start calling him Automatic. That's his real name, actually.
Oof. I don't know what this man.
And he
Thank
streams
you
and
again
stuff.
for having me on. That's
yeah.
right, the stream.
Drink Slurpees.
Twitch.tv/AutomaticJak. Many Slurpees.
We'll talk about Priest more in the future. I'll have to figure out who I can bring on to talk about Holy, because you talked about this today.
What?
Ah,
I didn't even have time.
too much to talk about, my friend. I know, man.
It's ready. It's in, you know, we can have a whole show just Holy.
I mean, obviously, I'll be doing individual class spec interviews in the future, so we'll be doing plenty of those when Legion is actually out. But right now, we're just in the Let's Talk Legion junket. So thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next week again. Hopefully do a tank and a rogue combo. And real quick, I will thank my assistant producers on Patreon. We have Erdwin, Oscar H, Death Scythe Pally, Spamurai, and of course, Derry. I love your stupid face, but you suck. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you here next week at 4 o'clock Eastern. If you're watching on YouTube right now, hello. We're also on iTunes and Stitcher. Just look up Final Boss TV. And until next week, everybody, trust in your seal of inevitable gold. And bye! Wave bye! Wave bye! 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 Wave bye! Wave bye! Az! Wave bye!
Bye. Bye. I will see you again.